वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
We will chant chapter 4, verses 37 to 42. यथैधांसि समिद्धोऽग्निः भस्मसात् कुरुतेऽर्जुन ज्ञानाग्निः सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा न हि ज्ञानेन सदृशं पवित्रमिह विद्यते तत्स्वयं योगसंसिद्धः कालेनात्मनि विन्दति श्रद्धावान् लभते ज्ञानं तत्परः संयतेन्द्रियः ज्ञानं लब्ध्वा परां शान्तिम् अचिरेणाधिगच्छति अज्ञश्चाश्रद्धदानश्च संशयात्मा विनश्यति नायं लोकोऽस्ति न परः न सुखं संशयात्मनः योगसन्न्यस्तकर्माणं ज्ञानसञ्छिन्न संशयम् आत्मवन्तं न कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय तस्मादज्ञानसम्भूतं हृस्तं ज्ञानासीनात्मनः चित्वैनं संशयं योगम् उत्तिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत.
So we have a question today. The question is from Agam. My understanding of sin was that it is mental agitation caused by identifying with action itself. But sin has also been defined as prohibited actions with regards to one's goal. It is also said to be the decisions that step outside the boundaries of our inner conscience. It is clear that sin is defined beyond the opposites of good and bad, but still not clear to me what it wholly comprises of. It seems to me that sin is a subjective concept. Explanation is much appreciated. So Agam, in any context, how we reflect or analyze this, we bring into focus the main word or the main idea. So the main idea you want to explore is sin. So what is sin? Definition is mental agitation is sin. Sin means mental agitation. Why is the mind agitated? You go one level deeper. When an action you perform, as a result of performing that action, if it returns and agitates your mind, that action can be labeled as sin. I never wore silk, just for example. Assuming before I studied Vedanta, I used to wear a silk tie. No agitation, no guilt, no sin. Because you don't even know what you're wearing. So father buys, mother buys, we are wearing it. A silk tie or a silk shirt and going to school, university. Is it sin? What sin? He needs a shirt, that's all. But once you gain the knowledge and understand, one silk shirt means 6,000 live worms put into boiling water. One silk tie means 2,000 worms, live worms put into boiling water. It's like you're wearing 6,000 silkworms, killing 6,000 lives for sporting a particular shirt. You may say, so what? They are meant for human beings. Again, no sin, because no agitation. But what am I doing? I'm wearing a silk shirt and I'm speaking about ahimsa in the class. This contradiction creates sin. Classical musicians, blissfully unaware, south or north doesn't matter, they are wearing silk robes and giving concerts on ahimsa. Kabir's songs, Tyagaraja's songs, all the songs are based on ahimsa. Buddha's philosophy based on ahimsa. Silk turban the person is wearing. Unaware, they are not aware. The principle they are teaching is what they are flouting in their own life. So when you become aware and there are contradictions, there is agitation in your mind. After it agitates the mind, you have a choice. Do I want to preach non-violence or do I want to be infatuated with silk turban? You have a choice. No, I want to preach non-violence for others, but I like silk turban. All others should not wear, but I will wear silk turban. After a while, it agitates the person. So that wearing of silk turban is a sin now. For 20 years, it's not a sin because you did not know. There was no conflict. I can say Agam is committing sin, but you're not committing any sin because you don't even know what you're doing. But when you become aware, you know that you committed sin for all 20 years. It's not that immediate action. What have I done with myself for 20 years? How many silk shirts and turbans and silk ties I have bought and gifted to people? So many silkworms I have killed. The whole thing agitates you. Then you say, I have been sinning in my life. Though 1 week before only you learnt about silk tie. But you say, I have been sinning in all my life for 20 years. This is how you have to analyze. You understand? This is how Vedanta says, sin means mental agitation. Mental agitation happens because of conflict between mind and intellect or mind and conscience. So one context you are saying, sin has been defined as prohibited action. Who says it is prohibited? Your intellect or conscience? If your intellect or your conscience doesn't alarm, it's prohibited. There is no resistance for your mind. Correct? So what is sin about it? I can say you are committing sin, but as far as you are concerned, you are not going to say that I am committing a sin. Because there is no conflict. So in an insane person, he murders another person. Is there a sin? In a lunatic asylum, a lunatic fellow pushes a child from the 4th floor, 8-year-old child, and the child suffers multiple injuries. Do you say it is a sinful action? There is no intent to cause injury. There is no intention at all. So sin requires an intention. Intention comes from intellect. So there has to be a conscious participation of thought. So my understanding was mental agitation caused by identifying with action. It's not identifying with action. It is identifying with desire propelling an action. In fact, we are saying don't identify with action without correspondence to desire. I am studying Vedanta, and those who are interested to study, I am being of some help to you. Is it a virtue or a sin? Not based on action. As far as you are concerned, I am teaching Vedanta. But as far as I am concerned, what am I doing? Somehow I should get Canadian citizenship. Somehow I should nail myself down here. I have to live here. And someday I have to get to United States and get a citizenship there. No such idea. In fact, I came from there. So I don't have to go back. So as far as I am concerned, I am using teaching Bhagavad Gita to get a citizenship. Incidentally, you are gaining knowledge. You understand? There is no virtue in it. My intention determines the nature of my action, not what you get out of it. What you get out of it is caused by your intention. So every concept, again, this is a general guideline to all: sin, vasana, intellect, mind, subtle body, whatever words you call in Vedanta, you can't swallow all your meal in one gulp. Understand this. There's a plate full of food, 8 rotis, and then dal, then some yogurt, achar, everything is there, and rasgulla also. Any one of us can swallow in one gulp? Let it be one roti, one katori of dal, one rasgulla, one glass of milk. Is there anyone who can swallow it in one gulp? So you have to bite, chew, swallow, bite, chew, swallow. This is the process of gaining knowledge. Every concept is learned in stages. So as you keep gaining the knowledge from different perspectives, each and every concept settles. So as far as the context here is concerned, you're asking if sin is a subjective concept. Why it is subjective? Because your mind, your intellect, your values are subjective to you. They are not propelling my actions. My mind and desires, my intellect and its discrimination, my conscience and its values cannot even propel Swarna, one's own partner. She has her own values, she has her own mind, she has her own intellect. That will propel her action and body. You understand? Therefore, it is subjective. Subjective doesn't mean you have the liberty to choose what is sin, what is virtue in your life. Killing others is virtue. Selfishness is virtue. Studying Vedanta, Gita, unselfishness is sin. I have a subjective concept of it. No, it's not subjective. Subjective to mean it depends on your mind, your intellect, your conscience. Howsoever close I am to you, my conscience and intellect cannot influence you, just as my desires cannot victimize you. My desires cannot victimize you. Therefore, it is subjective. Got some idea? So, it is not identifying with action itself. It is a irresistible desire which makes you perform an action against your intellect or conscience. So, sin means M, mind, greater than I, intellect, plus C, conscience. This is sin. If your intellect establishes the right path, there is no sin. If you go by the voice of conscience, there is no sin. That's what Krishna is telling Arjuna. If you win the battle, you will get prosperity. If you lose the battle, you will go to Swarga, heaven. Where is the loss in this? Where is sin in this, he says. So if you have prowess, you will win, which means you have established righteousness. So you'll get the prosperity over the kingdom. If you lose, you have fought for righteousness. You didn't fight for selfishness. You'll go to heaven, he says. There is no such thing as heaven, but he's speaking Arjuna's words. Because the propulsion is virtue. Propulsion is not selfishness there. That determines sin or virtue. Intention. Not merely the action. That doesn't mean action is excluded. The analysis of what is sin or virtue is not based on action. It is based on intention that has propelled that action. Last week, a couple attending class came and they asked, does this wearing mask really help? There is so much of debate. Do you know anything? I said, I really don't know anything. I know nothing about medicine and I can't even comment. But I wear a mask wherever I go. Whether even if 90% of sources are saying it doesn't make any difference. As long as the government says you wear it, I'll wear it. Now, what is the point in it? He said, sir, I am wearing a bindi. My guru told me the significance of wearing a tilak. I have not individually understood what is its significance. When you see the tilak, the chandan on the forehead, you are supposed to remember the self which is beyond the fleshy eyes. This is the significance. Ladies wear a bindi, men wear a tilak, or it could be a mark, it could be ashes, it could be anything on the forehead to say, as a human being, you can have wisdom of intellect with which you see life, not fleshy eyes alone. So I am doing you a favor by wearing a tilak, because you look at the tilak, you remember the self. If you don't wear, you are failing to remind me. You understand? That's your choice. I can't force Agam, you should wear a tilak and remind me. I can only fulfill my obligation. Every time I wear, I remember it. Every time I see, I remember it. Every time you see, if you know the significance, you remember it. Same way, when you wear a mask, at least you remember there is something happening in the whole world. Whether that mask protects you or not, it's not going to give you any disease. Imagine no one wears a mask. We take everything so casually. But that mask at least serves the purpose of sounding out to each other that there is something unrecognizable going on in our society. We should be on guard. It helps to reinstate your intellect. If it doesn't fight the virus, I don't know about fighting the virus. You have to ask a doctor. But psychologically, it has a purpose. If the government says wear it, why don't you look at it positively? He said, okay, now I understand. I got a Vedantic answer. He said, yeah, for everything there is a way to look at it in life. Your vision hurts you, not what others say. You have a wrong vision, it hurts you. Right, Agam? Verse 37.
यथैधांसि समिद्धोऽग्निः भस्मसात् कुरुतेऽर्जुन ज्ञानाग्निः
सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा यथैधांसि समिद्धोऽग्निः भस्मसात् कुरुते अर्जुन ज्ञानाग्निः सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा. Translation. As blazing fire reduces fuel to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge reduce all actions to ashes. So previous verse he said, even if you are the most sinful of sinners, means a person with abundance of negative tendencies, selfishness, desires, vasanas, whatever you see in yourself, even if you consider yourself to be the most sinful of sinners, it's a matter of time. You will reach spiritual realization. That's what he says. The raft of knowledge will protect you. That's what he said. The boat of knowledge will help you sail across. Here he says what knowledge does. As blazing fire reduces fuel to ashes, so does fire of knowledge reduce all actions to ashes. Ash means no regermination. There is no possibility of revival. This is the significance of ashes. It is an irreversible process. Once you have burned something into ashes, there is no way you can recreate that particular form. Anyone in recycling industry, don't refute me. Understand it in its scope. You burnt the tree, it has become ashes. I don't know how you'll bring the tree back. You can't. So by ashes, what he means is spiritual path, spiritual journey is an irreversible process from ignorance to knowledge. Because this fear is there. What will happen to all the values, all the knowledge we are gaining? You are permanently elevated to a higher level. The only thing that you take with you throughout life and after life is your wisdom and ignorance. Material possessions, sense objects, emotional delights, intellectual knowledge, intelligence, language, everything is gone. Your spiritual maturity is something that you can never lose. Even temporarily, a person who loses memory, Whether he is a scientist or an engineer or a doctor, he has lost that memory. Whether he is married or single, he has lost the memory. Very comfortable it is if he loses. Every memory is gone. Whether he has assets or liabilities, he has lost it. But in that loss of memory, he can't function in an immature way because he has elevated himself. You understand? He won't behave in a childish way. He won't behave in a base, sensual way because the vasanas cannot be forgotten. Your possessions can be forgotten. Your people, family ties can be forgotten. Your assets and bank balance can be forgotten. Your passwords can be forgotten. Your vasanas don't disappear. You understand, Agam? So a robber who has lost his memory in a hospital, he forgets that he is a robber. But before his meal arrives, he will steal the neighbor's meal and eat. That vasana won't go. A dhanavan, a dharma-based person in the hospital is forgotten. Very charitable person. All life he has lived for others. In the hospital, he will say, this lady is aged. Why don't you serve the meal to her? So in aeroplane, they bring the food and they come till 14th seat and then say, I'll come back. So such a person will pick up the plate and give it to the next person and say, I can see you're visibly hungry. I can wait for 10 minutes. But he has forgotten his memory. Whether he is an engineer or a lawyer, he has forgotten. Whether he has assets or liabilities, he has forgotten. Indian or Japanese, he has forgotten. But vasanas cannot be part of forgetfulness. It will manifest. You understand? So, the only thing that you can take with you is your knowledge and ignorance. Your spiritual maturity is the only thing that propels your life from point to point. Maturity or the absence of it, which is vasanas. So he says, as fire reduces fuel, jnana-agni, jnana means knowledge, agni means fire. That is why there is a ritual of carrying a pot of fire on head and going to temple. There's a ritual. People pray, if my daughter gets married, I'll take a pot of fire on the head and walk to the temple. This is a ritual to signify that you are carrying the fire of conviction and knowledge in your intellect. Pot of fire, even a donkey can carry. If you put it on its head and give it a local anesthesia, it will carry it on its back. It won't feel any pain. It won't feel any heat. So the significance of the ritual is to say, I am on the resolve to carry knowledge in my intellect. This is my lifetime resolve. It is like an army officer, even if he goes on a leave to his village, he wears the army robes and sits in the train, if you have seen it. He is not firing and fighting with people. Why should he wear a uniform? Because being soldier is 24/7. Patriotism, there cannot be a break to it. It's the air that he breathes. So fire here represents knowledge. Fuel represents desires or vasanas. That is why we light a lamp in the temple. Oil represents the fuel, desires. The wick, thread, represents the ego. So there is a lamp, there is oil in it, there is a wick, the thread is there. But if you don't light it with fire, that thread will be there all the time, soaking and drinking the oil, swelling in the oil. This is what happens to the ego. But at the tip of that thread, of that wick, of that ego, if you light just a matchstick of fire, you don't have to bring California fire to it. Just a matchstick. Strike and light that. Slowly, the ego starts burning. And as the ego burns, it empties the fuel, which is the oil. And after that, what is left is nothing but ashes. The oil has disappeared. The wick thread has disappeared. And what has happened to the knowledge? The manifest fire has merged with unmanifest fire. When you strike a matchstick, where is fire coming from? It is neither in the matchstick nor in the matchbox. Striking, creating friction brings the fire. So where is fire coming from? Manifest fire is coming from unmanifest heat, unmanifest fire, which is there everywhere. Unmanifest fire is everywhere, which is the room temperature. So by creating friction, you are bringing unmanifest fire into manifestation. You don't need a matchstick. You just have to rub your palms. Instantly you feel the heat. Where is this heat coming from? There is heat everywhere, but friction makes it manifest. So the manifest fire in the lamp merges with the unmanifest fire. Unmanifest fire, unmanifest knowledge is the Atman in you. So what happens to all the scriptural knowledge, thoughts, ideas, concepts and all that? It takes you until you attain total merger with Atman, the self. Burn up all the oil and the ego is completely burnt out. What remains is the total self. That is why we light a candle in the church. The wax is the fuel. The wick that is standing erect is the ego. If there is no wax, the wick falls. In a candle, you see the thread is standing up erect. What is making the thread stand up erect? It is the wax that is surrounding it. Without the wax, the thread cannot stand erect. So as you light the pilot fire on top of the candle, the wax is melting. And as the wax melts, you find that the wick is burned. Finally, nothing is left. Manifest fire merges with unmanifest fire. This symbolizes spiritual process of jnanagni, kindling knowledge within you, exhausting the desires. So he says, knowledge reduces all actions to ashes. Knowledge means not the book knowledge. Knowledge means these words reflected upon become the propelling thoughts in life. Your thoughts are propelled based on that knowledge. That would burn all the desires. So in one word, intellect, that's all. Buddhi. So once you have gained that knowledge, your intellect, it is loaded in the intellect. It is not there in the books anymore. It has become you, a part of you. So once you have light that bit of spark, a fire in you, that Agni keeps burning 24/7 inside you. Not understanding the Agni to be knowledge, many people literally believe that a spiritual sadhak means the body will be very hot and you'll be precipitating, you'll be, sweating all the time. Yogis are exploiting all that. They sit in -22 and show that they are sweating, and they are called as spiritual yogis. Why? Because jnanagni they have inside them. If you have 3 heaters, you will sweat jnanagni. $30 from Costco, you can get it. $100 jnanagni is selling there. That's not the jnanagni they are talking about. This is just a physical practice, that's all. A Labrador dog at -35 sits spreading his chest in the snow. Does it have jnanagni? Just made by nature like that, that's all. So same way, many people claim that I can sweat in -22. Why? Because I have jnanagni within me. I don't need heater. This is because we are ignorant of what jnanagni means. Jnanagni means the fire of knowledge in your intellect, not the body temperature, which you can increase and decrease within parameters with certain practices. No doubt, you can do that. There are practices to cool your body to some extent. There are some practices to warm up your body to a parameter, to a particular extent. But that's not the jnanagni they are talking about. Jnanagni here means knowledge. 38.
Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddhaha kalenatmani vindati.
Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddhaha kalenatmani vindati. Translation. verily there is no purifier here like knowledge. He who is perfected in yoga finds it in self in time, finds it in the self in time. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramika vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsiddhaha kalenatmani vindati. Get it by heart. Keep chanting it every day. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramika vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsiddhaha kalenatmani vindati. Nahi, these are emphatic statements where he says, Nahi jnanena sadrisham. There is no other purifier here. Here means in your life than knowledge. Like knowledge. So what are purifiers? Impurity in spiritual context means selfish, self-centered desires. Purity means unselfishness leading to knowledge of self. Vasanas or spiritual impurity. Knowledge, wisdom is spiritual purity. So, nahi jnanena sadrisham. There is no purifier here like knowledge, which means there are other purifiers. What are the other purifiers? Dhanam, dharma, purifies you of selfishness in material possessions. You understand? That's why every religion puts a number. In Sanatana Dharma, there is no number. Because we don't believe in spiritual taxation. Number is just spiritual tax, that's all. And then the confusion is 15% my religion says, from white or black money or both. Suppose I win a lotto lottery, does 15% apply to that as well? COVID times, is there any concession to 15%? We get into absurdities. So there are no dictations, there are no do's and don'ts. Knowledge is given. Yata yashyashi tata kuru. Do what you wish. This is Sanatana Dharma. So what is that knowledge? From a material point of view, dhanam, dharma, which can't happen as long as you identify with your selfish, self-centered ways of life. Even for Bill Gates, it's not enough what he has. If he is focused on his welfare alone. You may be a pauper, but if you identify with others, you want to live a life of giving, sharing, caring for others. You may not have much to give, share and care. But what you have seems abundance because of poverty in selfishness. You are poor in selfishness, abundant in possessions, though possessions could be of less in quantity. That's what Christ says. It is difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God than for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. This is what he means. Rich man means not wealthy person. Rich in terms of selfishness. He will never go to kingdom of God. But a camel will pass through eye of a needle. What an exaggeration. So what is the purifier? Dhanam, dharma. And where do you start? Not by cutting checks alone. You know, they gave day-to-day practices of putting a rangoli in front of the house, which is made up of rice powder, powdered rice. Now we make it out of pesticide. Any crow or bird comes and eats, immediately dies. So you take it in for midday meal. The bird, pigeon. So the idea is that because of my physical power, I am snatching the fruit, I am snatching the vegetation from these beings. I have an obligation to share with them. That is why they said, as soon as you get up, do the rangoli. Why? Because there are insects, there are worms that are crawling. They'll get that food. Small rangoli, a family of insects are surviving. And whenever you take fruits from a tree, don't take all the fruits out. Leave some there, because one tree means 10 families of birds are there. Now today we take all that to a point of fault and make it an organization. It's not an organization, it's an awareness. You follow it in your house, your neighbor follows in his house. What is the need for organizations to teach others? There's no need. So they inculcated to microcosmic level of individuals without social media, without advertising. Unless you serve a Brahmin food, you should not eat food. This was the culture people followed. Brahmin means a person who has the custody of knowledge, who spends entire life investing for society's upliftment. So unless you identify one such person and feed him food, you cannot eat food. That means none of us can eat food. So they made the whole thing inserted into one's life where you forced to identify with people. And then festivals were carried out in temples with rath, with the cart, which required the entire village to tow that. So entire village had to participate in the festival. The grains producer donated grains. The person who was running the cattle farm donated milk. The third type of person who was selling fruits and vegetables donated that. And the festival was conducted to bring that charitable disposition in the village. So in the name of God, if you don't do, in the name of neighbor, you won't do. So they inculcated that giving. So you don't need fundraisers and dinners for giving. In your home, every day you can practice it. So this is purifier. Subtler than that is seva. Seva is where you go and engage yourself in karma, in action, in service, where it doesn't bring anything back to you. Our doctor, dentist in Bangalore, he goes and treats tribal people, stinking faces, mouths. Our mouths stink when we go to a dentist. And go to tribal people, every day they are chewing all sorts of things, all decayed tooth. And then find a donor, do a transplant, find them artificial, whatever is needed. For what? Not for Bharat Ratna. Nothing will be given to us. You have to be acting in movies to get all that. So no person who does conscientious service gets all that. Why do we do it? Because you feel that this action cannot be limited to me, my family, my wife, my child, my pet dog. It has to bless the society. Without this awareness, the skill that you have will destroy you and 7 generations. This is what the Upanishad says. I am not saying. So at times when I feel, should I take 6, 7 classes, I think about 7 generations will be destroyed. If you don't use your skill for public, whether you are gaining or you are bored, I don't know. But it says that if you are selfish, self-centered, your selfishness will destroy 7 generations. You can't destroy selfishness because they will learn that from you. They will be a lot more selfish and self-centered. And by the time it is 3rd generation, there will be a terrorist in the family. Because selfishness is what you're bequeathing. Dhanam, dharmam you're not teaching. And you're saying in Canada, children are getting spoiled. We are spoiled. We have not shown them the right way. So seva. The third is identification. Without identification, there cannot be service, there cannot be charity. And what is that identification? Body is different. Mind is different. Thoughts are different, but the self is the same. Pain in you is pain in me. Pleasure in you is pleasure in me. It's the same. When it pains you, if that happens to me, it pains the same way in me. How can I be indifferent towards your pain? This is called knowledge, awareness, identification. Therefore, he says, without gaining knowledge with which you can identify, there cannot be service, there cannot be charity. Knowledge purifies your selfishness from its roots. Charity may not do, service may not do, love will not do, because you can operate from a surface. Why are you doing charity? Because I want name and fame. My name will be there. I'm doing charity to the business school because my daughter will get admission, my granddaughter will get a free seat. You're exchanging, you're investing. But when you gain knowledge, whether you are doing anything or not, knowledge instills a sense of indebtedness in life. I am taking. What am I taking? I am taking oxygen. I'm just taking and taking and taking in life. Is there any way I can put something back? This is called knowledge. Knowledge is not mastering verses in the book. This awareness followed by a sense of reciprocation is called knowledge. So what do you give a guru? Guru, there is no price tag. Because first is a real guru is one who wants nothing from the disciple. If he wants, he is not a guru, he is a professor. The second is, he has got himself the highest, which is infinite bliss. Now what else can you give him? We can't give anything to our gurus, to a Shankara, to a Christ, to a Buddha. What is that you can give? You can't say, I'll buy you a Cineplex ticket and dinner. Are you excited? Nothing excites, nothing dejects. They have raised themselves to that level. But you have a sense of gratitude. You think about it. I have a sense of gratitude. I should think about it. This is called as Rishi Rina. Your indebtedness to your lineage of sages and saints that left this knowledge so that we can pick it up and study. So there is no purifier like knowledge. He who is perfected in yoga, yoga means uniting with the self. This knowledge will give you material simplicity. This knowledge will give you mental peace. But the real effect of this knowledge is spiritual inspiration. Someday I should find out what that self is. What is that real being? Pure consciousness. That state of being free from thoughts. This inspiration is what is called as yoga. This inspiring conviction knowledge brings. Nahi jnanena sadrasham pavitra miha vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsiddhaha kalena atmani vindati. Kalena atmani. Kalena atmani. Kalena means in the course of time. It's a matter of time. So don't be result oriented. When will I get it? Am I evolving 10% more from March to now? How much I have evolved? Don't allow your mind to become excited over the results. It's a matter of time. And how much time? It depends on your existing spiritual vasanas and spiritual effort. The burden of vasanas and your spiritual effort will decide whether the time will be short or long. A disciple asks, how much time will it take to realize the self? The answer is Bahunam Janmanam Ante. Many Janmas. Another disciple asks, how long it will take to realize the self? Here and now, Master says. Same Master, two answers. Here and now. Here and now means if you are ready here and now. If you are not ready, Bahunam Janmanam Ante. Innumerable lifetime. What is the difference? Knowledge is the difference. So it's just a matter of time. Not just the realization, every bit of knowledge transforms you. The one who is coming into the class cannot be the one who is going out of the class. Whether it is the speaker or the listener, it is applicable to both. 39.
Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatpara sanyatendriyaha jnanam labdhva param shantim achirenadhigacchati.
Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatparat sanyatendriyaha jnanam labdva param shantim achirenadhigacchati. Translation. He who has Shraddha, who is devoted, who has subdued the senses, attains knowledge. Having attained knowledge, he ere long gains supreme peace. So the verse gives two messages. One is qualifications in spiritual pursuit. What are the practices by which you qualify yourself in spiritual path? The second is a relative result and the absolute result. He who has Shraddha, Shraddha, though it is translated as faith, it is not faith. Shraddha means conviction with which you go to the end of your chosen pursuit. Total dedication with which a person can complete what one has visioned. This is Shraddha. Steadfastness, consistency, no giving up, reaching the ultimate is Shraddha. Vivekananda said, stop not till the goal is reached. That is Shraddha. What will take you to that Shraddha? One who is devoted. Devotion means awareness of areas of ignorance. Devotion doesn't mean putting marks and praying in front of deity. Devotion is not the casual practice of bhakti. Devotion here means awareness of areas of limitations in life, in spirituality, because of which your ego is not prominent in you. There is a willingness to surrender to higher sources. This is important for a disciple. A disciple should be willing to surrender to higher sources of knowledge. Why will you surrender to higher sources of knowledge? Because you lack intellectual insight in certain areas. So you can't take chances. You can't live life on trial and error. So the one who has the right attitude of surrendering the ego can be called as a devotee. That person may not subscribe to a temple, may not go to mosque or spiritual places, but he is a devotee. So who is a devotee? A person who is aware of one's areas of ignorance, followed by willingness to surrender to higher sources. Surrender means being receptive. Surrender doesn't mean touching the feet and falling at the feet and staying outside the door and waiting for the person. Surrender is not gesture. So he who is devoted, okay, I am devoted, but what happens at the level of body? Subdued the senses. No guru can help in this context. Are we making the senses more demanding, or is there a checkpoint to subdue the senses? Some representative from Senior Association spoke this evening. He said, we want wellness for seniors, if you can give a talk. I said, definitely you'll give a talk. But what do you want me to speak? You know the subject. I speak on plus 70, 75. We have about 500, 600 people, he said. I said, equanimity of action, with the dexterity in action, equanimity of mind. No point speaking to people who are retired 20 years back. Concentration, consistency, cooperation. Set an ideal and work for higher cause. What higher cause? One kiss from granddaughter you will give your life for. What higher cause you can work? So these things will not work in the talk. I said, I have designed something. And what is that? I said, one of the aspects I'll tell you, which is called as Varnasrama Dharma. Varnasrama Dharma means, Varna means color. Ashrama means stage in life. In some other context, we will study that. So there are different ashramas. Brahmachari, Balavastha, Brahmacharya, Grihastha Ashrama, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. Vanaprastha means a person who has mentally disengaged from samsaric ties. 85-year-old couple are going and ordering a king-size bed. What Vanaprastha you can practice? I told him. 85-year-old still believe that they need a king-size bed in their bedroom. What Vanaprastha you can practice? So this was inculcated very early in life to say that your life should be punctuated with certain distances. Not on the bed distances, not inside the house. Mental distance from samsara. So they prepared people that one day you should be ready to mentally disengage. Because if you don't disengage, worries don't end. Once my daughter is married, after that, sir, I am taking up Vedanta. Daughter is married. She says, Dad, this father-in-law is not like you. Finished. What happens to dad in you? Melting like a wax candle. Mother says, shut up, you're a spoiled girl. Go and work in the kitchen. Father cannot handle it. Daughter suffers, father cannot handle. Son suffers, mother cannot handle. I don't know what is the psychology in it. Whenever my mother used to call, first question she would ask is, what did you eat? 5:45 in the morning in Dubai, 7 a.m. in Chennai. What did you eat? Did you have lunch? 5:45, how can a fellow have lunch? This is mother's thing. My father never used to say, but usually the father say, hey, don't leave your credit cards and purse loose. Huh? I heard there is a lot of pickpocketing going on in your city. Father is bothered about your credit cards. Mother first question is asked, even if you're obese, she says, did you have food, beta? Different personalities function differently. So here he says, subdued the senses. This idea is not known. 80, 85, we want to take injections and activate senses. What to talk about subdued senses? So having attained knowledge, before long he attains supreme peace. If you understand these values, Shraddha for intellect, devotion for mind, self-governance for body, then you will gain knowledge, he says. Knowledge we are gaining. With a glass of whiskey in your hand, you can gain knowledge. The book will not turn away and run away from your table. The book will sit there. Even if you have a glass of whiskey, don't bring it to Vijay next class. You only said that whiskey is okay, I'll bring a couple of pigs. So what is that knowledge? Subduing the senses means whatever you are engaging in study will transform into conviction because there is no barrier in the personality. Desires manifest as sensual demands. Desires manifest through the mind as lack of surrender and devotion, through the intellect as inconsistency, not following the words of one's own guide, one's own guru. Words means not literally the words, directions. Swamiji says, what time you get up? 4 a.m. Why don't you get up and spend a couple of pages, read a couple of pages? I think he's an old man. Age of 28, at his age he used to get up at 4 a.m. Nowadays it is not practical. This is inconsistency at the level of intellect. Such a fellow, what happens to it, he is going to tell us. But first is he will not gain knowledge. He will know a lot, but he will become critical, cynical. 3.5, 4 years back, a very ardent couple attending classes. I don't know if they are there. I can't see all the screen. Very, very ardent. They are yoga practitioners. They came and said, sir, this particular person talks in front of you as though you are his life savior. You know what he says behind? I said, I don't want to. It's not about me. It is about anyone. That is how they will be talking about you. What do they have against me? Your contact with me is 60 minutes in a week. You don't know anything more than that about me. I know nothing about you. Srinivas Padmanabhan, what is he? I don't know. Is a banker or a doctor or a single person married or what he, I have no idea of your social profile. You have no idea of social profile. Why should anyone carry opinions about the others? So I said, they are consuming knowledge. They are very sincere. But what is lacking is they are not putting an effort to transform it into wisdom. So after a while, this knowledge will turn into a cynical attitude. This is all beautiful for Wednesday, but practical life is different. If Ranga starts living practical life, what is practical? Am I floating somewhere mid in the air? Same oxygen I'm breathing. You buy $3 in Walmart milk, same $3. He doesn't say you're a Vedanta student, we'll give you for 3 cents. Everything is practical for you and me the same way. So what happens is, you have not dared to test these values in your life. Therefore, you have developed a cynical attitude. And I told them, forget it. Whoever has that cynical attitude will quit. If I have a cynical attitude to my guru, I will quit. If I have a cynical attitude towards Vedas, I'll quit. So what makes the person cynical? An intellectual way of looking at it without devotion, without a sense governance. Without these two lower levels of practices, knowledge, the third floor, will not stay stable. So first is you gain knowledge. That's again, based on that knowledge, you gain supreme peace, means realization. If you don't practice, what happens? 40 is giving it up.
Ajñascha shraddhadanascha samshayatma vinashyati nayam lokosti na paraha na sukam samshayatmanah
Ajñascha shraddhadanascha samshayatma vinashyati nayam lokosti na paraha na sukam samshayatmanah. Translation: the ignorant, devoid of Shraddha, the doubting self, is ruined. There is neither this world nor the other, nor happiness for the doubting self. Very, very strong words, rarely used in scriptures. Ajña means ignorant. The ignorant, ashraddadana, shraddha means consistency, ashraddha means lacking shraddha. Devoid of shraddha, samshayatma, samshayam means doubting. Atma here refers to the individual. Samshayatma means the doubting individual. Doubting what? All this is great for Wednesdays, but practical life, it will not work. So, samshayatma means doubting self. Where is this doubt coming from? As we gain knowledge, we allow the mind to play. That is why self-governance, self-control was emphasized. The second thing that was emphasized is living with the Guru. Why living with the Guru was emphasized for this education is, you look at the Guru, your doubts disappear. Because the Guru is one who lives the values effortlessly. He is not practicing the values. His practice is over. So his personality is cleaned completely. What radiates out of him is wisdom. Effortlessly he lives that life. So whenever there is a doubt, you look up and say, this is my guide. Guru is not Guru because he gives material. Material books can give. But direction and inspiration only a living master can give. I am living paycheck to paycheck. What is your salary? $20,000. So someone is living in the same country with 10% of what you earn or lesser than that. It becomes a source of inspiration. And they are not struggling and begging in the streets. So it becomes a source of inspiration. When you see a coach effortlessly lift weights, it's a source of inspiration. But if you read the book, how exactly to hold the weights, how exactly to breathe and lift, it won't give you inspiration. It will give you material. It won't give you inspiration. So samshayatma, doubting self, means a person who doesn't carry out the knowledge through reflection into wisdom. That is where the doubts and indecisiveness comes in. So the first test is, in your own way, you have to engage in karma, or else this knowledge will not work. You can fill your time. And for the class, whether 20 people are there, 200 people are there, it makes no difference. But if you have to make productive use of your time, you have to digest what you're listening. In fact, the class is only an inducement for you to delve into knowledge yourself. The class is not to make you flood with knowledge. When it is narrated, it is very easy to understand. Because going through the years, it enters the head straight. That is why they taught through voice. They didn't write books those days. Not because they didn't have paper and pen. Directly, the receptivity was very high. So, the samshayatma vinashyati, ruined not to mean whoever doesn't attend class will be ruined. Whoever doesn't study Gita will be ruined. Not in that sense. The doubtingness in you will ruin you. The indecisiveness in you will ruin you. Nothing in the world will ruin. The indecisiveness will ruin the person. There is neither this world, means you won't perform right action in the world here, which will get you success, nor the other. If you can't fend yourself in the world here, how can you think of reaching heaven, which comes through meritorious deeds to others? Nor happiness for the doubting self, because this indecisiveness consumes the mind, causes deep stress and agitation. This is what happens to a person who doesn't gain the knowledge or doesn't take the knowledge to the next step. 41.
Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchinna samshayam atmavantam na karmani
Nibadnanti dhananjaya yoga sanyasya karmanam jnana samchinna samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadnanti dhananjaya. Translation: he who has renounced actions by yoga, whose doubts are rent asunder by knowledge, who is poised in the self, actions do not bind him, O Dhananjaya. So where does this knowledge take a person towards? Freedom from vasanas. That is what this verse describes. Agam, your question in a way is answered. He who has renounced actions by yoga, action means you can't renounce action. You can renounce the compulsive desire with which you act. How can you renounce a desire? By yoga, not Lululemon yoga. Yoga means attunement to higher. When you intellectually attune and get established in the higher, the joys, subtler joys of higher will relieve you from superficial pleasures of lower. This is called as renunciation. Renunciation means knowledge and getting established in the higher. Result of it is dispassion to lower. You renounce the lower. So you can't renounce anything unless you are established in the higher. We can't get established in the higher unless we know what is higher. So we are all in the preliminary stage of familiarizing ourselves with what is higher in life. Name, fame, power, position, family, status, wealth. Beyond all this, is there anything? The intangible world starts. This is the knowledge of higher. So one who has renounced actions means reduced vasanas, desires, whose doubts are rent asunder by knowledge. Doubts are cut asunder because through your personal experience, you know how knowledge works. You don't borrow the authority of masters and books. How do you know Vedanta helps? Based on my own past. If it has brought me to this point of 40% stability of intellect, it can take me to 60, 80, 100. If I continue the same direction. So one who practices what was laid out in the previous verse, first thing is freedom from desire. Second is your conviction becomes the yardstick for practice, not what others say. Your own conviction. Such a person is poised in the self, abides in the self. Person is an introverted, a stabilized person, not carried away by the fluctuations of outside world. He is poised in the self, not fluctuating due to desires. Such a person, actions do not bind. Actions do not bind means the action he performs doesn't increase vasanas, nor the result of action affects the person. Result of action doesn't affect. Result of action affects only when there is a compulsive desire, when you have a value for that result. The action is performed for a higher sake, not for personal results. Therefore, action doesn't affect. So, who is poised in the self, actions will not bind him. Oh, Dhananjaya. Dhananjaya means winner of wealth. He is appealing to every one of us. You are picking wealth, terrestrial wealth, like birds picking up things from a tree. Real dhanam is that which you can hold in your intellect. By giving, it doesn't reduce. That's real dhanam. Dhanam. Dhanam, Dhanam, 2 words. When you have this Dhanam, then you can do Dhanam, not bank account currencies. That no one does Dhanam. That is why people say he has so much. Look at what he gives. $2 he gives in a temple and eats so much of prasad. Because the real Dhanam is not there. Bank assets is there. But the Dayalu Dhanam is not there inside. And a person may be a simple person, but could be in charitable deeds. Because that real Dhanam, intellectual wealth is there. So this knowledge is real Dhanam, Arjuna. Not what you will gain through battle. Not prosperity of kingdom. 42.
तस्मादज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासीनात्मनः
Tatvainam samshayam yogam atishtothishta bharata tasmadajnana sambhutam hristam jnanasinatmanaha chitvainam samshayam yogam atishtothishta bharata. Translation. Therefore, cutting asunder with sword of knowledge this ignorance born doubt of the self dwelling in your heart, be established in yoga. Arise, O Bharata. Grand conclusion, 42nd verse. Tasmat means therefore, which means a sequence of logical instructions or arguments arriving at an irrefutable conclusion. It is not Krishna advising Arjuna, it is knowledge for entire humanity. That is why he uses the word therefore, tasmat. Therefore, cutting asunder the sword with the sword of knowledge. You have the sword, metal sword, to chop your enemies. Why can't you use it? Because the sword of knowledge is not there in you. You can't fight the battle. So the greatest weapon is the sword of knowledge, with which what do you cut? The ignorance, doubting self you cut. Indecisiveness of intellect and the wavering of mind you get rid of. Where is it? It is seated deep in the personality, dwelling in your heart. Then you will be established in yoga. Then you will be established in these values which inspire you. Now it just inspires you. It doesn't transform us. So when will that transformation happen? When you take that plunge, and that plunge is what is there in Old Testament. When voice of God told Moses, catch hold of the serpent. Moses hesitated. Voice of God said, don't hesitate. Hold that hissing serpent, poisonous serpent. And Moses caught hold of it. If he did not catch hold of that poisonous serpent, the Sermon on the Mount would have been forgotten. Moses would have been just another tribe. What is the difference between Moses and all the tribes? Moses caught hold of the serpent when the voice of God instructed. That voice of God is instructing all of us all the time. We don't catch hold of it. Why he calls it serpent? Because the spiritual plunge is like a poison. That spiritual effort is like a poison. Giving is poisonous. Identifying is poisonous. Anything evolutionary is poisonous. Selfish, self-centered, getting stuck with comfort zone is pleasant. Unless you are ready to take the sword of knowledge and cut all this which are seated deep in you, you will not gain knowledge. If you are ready to take that plunge, you will be established in yoga. Then you are a yogi. Then you are performing spiritual practices. Arise, O Bharata. Bharata to say, this spiritual initiative is there in your system. It is there in the society. It is there in the family. It is there in the people. It is there in the gurus. It is there in the books. It is there everywhere in the oxygen to this fact. In spite of having it around you all the time, if you can't take a plunge, forget it. Bharata to mean you come from that lineage that lived in the light of consciousness. So this knowledge and spiritual plunge is not alien to you. It is natural to you. Yet you do not want to take that spiritual plunge. Why? Because you have a metal sword, you don't have the sword of knowledge, with which you can cut asunder this doubt within, indecisiveness within. 42. Conclusion.
Om Tat Sad
Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yogo Nama Chaturtho Dhyayaha.
Together we will chant the first verse of chapter 4.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam Vivaswan Manave Praha Manurikshvagave Bravi. So the tradition is we chant the first verse of the chapter we concluded because Shravana is over. Shravana means hearing, listening is over. So the Guru brings us and puts us in the beginning of chapter to say, now your manana should start. So as you engage in Shravana, Manana, your mind becomes meditative. You propel yourself into Nitidhyasana. So meditation you can't learn from another person because the other person teaching could have a quiet mind, a meditative mind. No guru can give a meditative mind to a disciple. He can only give the knowledge of how to get it. But meditation, 5 minutes is enough. In fact, 3 minutes is enough to teach. Meditativeness, one lifetime is not enough to calm the mind. So, how does one calm the mind and bring it to Nitidhyasana? By Manana. Now, before Manana, you need Shravana. So, Shravana, listening is over. Though we will proceed into the next chapter, you got to engage in your study. That is why one full week is there. Verses 38 to 42 is Krishna's advice to gain wisdom. Don't miss this context. It is so important, these few verses. Go through the commentary, and if you have questions, come up with questions even in the next session.
Sorry, okay. Hari Om Rangaji. This is actually from last week's class. You had mentioned that intelligence is actually an impediment for spiritual evolution. Now, you can have intelligence and also you can have your intellect also developed. So, can you just clarify that?
Mere intelligence without intellect is an impediment. Intelligence is not an impediment. Intelligence drives you to play with the mechanics of sense objects. Intellect makes you ask questions beyond what your eyes see. Intelligence is a blessing in Ramatirtha. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa had no worldly intelligence, but he did not suffer self-realization. He reached. You understand? But when you speak to very intelligent people, doctors, lawyers, intelligent architects, engineers, they would say, what Vedanta are you talking about? You are talking about Vedanta to me. You know, I'm a professor in Harvard Business School. If you know a professor, University of Toronto, doctorate in divinity, and then say, fascinating Bhagavad Gita commentary I want you to read, what will the fellow say? You know what my degree is? Doctorate in divinity. And you are talking to me about Bhagavad Gita. So what is the obstacle there? Not ego, intelligence. Intelligence is decorating the ego and becoming an obstacle. But if the intellect is there, the same person will be humble. You may say, I have read many versions. Please, thank you for the gift. I will definitely go through it when I have time. It's not that you have to read all the books. So, mere intelligence is an obstacle because intelligence drives you out. Intellect makes you ask fundamental questions of life. Intelligence asks, why COVID? Who is responsible? China is responsible, or Japan is responsible, America is responsible, meat eaters are responsible. Who is responsible? This is hair-splitting intelligence. Intellect says, collectively humanity is responsible. Someone asked the question in Thursday class. We didn't do anything, we are suffering, correct? Light bulb you found or your father found? Edison found. Why are you using? I didn't discover light bulb, so I will not use. Wi-Fi I didn't discover, I will not use. Oxygen I am not pumping, so I won't breathe. No, you don't take that stance. You enjoy freely everything that is contributions of others. Disease of others only you say that no, I will not take it. Collectively, humanity is at fault. This is intellect. Pinpointing to few people and saying, because of you I am suffering, is intelligence. Intelligence hurts when it is not guided by intellect. Not intelligence alone, Babu.
Thank you. Yeah.
Until next week.